Okay, so I'm pre-recording this because I have no idea if I'll post it, but I wanted to talk to y'all about my Ibogaine journey and tell you what it is. But it's like to understand it, you kind of have to understand the overall context of my life. So it's funny because I was like reaching out to people in my close circle and letting them know that I was going on this Ibogaine journey and telling them a little bit about what it was. And Ibogaine does several things, and it's effective for a lot of different groups of people. So there are people like me who sought treatment because of, past trauma, anxiety, like the feeling like my chest was just constricted and in a vice grip like 24 hours a day. And my nervous system kind of felt like, I would approach some kind of minor adversity and my brain is like, this is minor adversity. We can navigate this perfectly well. But my nervous system, like my hands would shake and my voice would shake. And like, I was just completely dysregulated and just like right at the edge all of the time. So like my nervous system couldn't differentiate between like normal daily adversity, like conflict at work and being chased by a bear. So I was reaching out and my friend Joni was like, so what opioid are you addicted to? And I was like, whoa, I am high on life and like maybe a little bit of weed, but nobody's worried about that. But Ibogaine is super effective for people who are experiencing opioid addiction. As a matter of fact, when somebody quits opioids, it takes about 18 months for their dopamine and serotonin functions to come back online. And opioid withdrawal symptom is like miserable. And so somebody coming off of opioids has a huge like recidivism rate because 18 months to not feel good is a really terribly long time. Well, Ibogaine reduces that window to like 36 hours. And you do it in a medically supervised setting. They're doing all of these things for you. So you can actually get over the hump. And I don't remember the exact statistics, but like something like 80 something percent of people who receive this treatment who are addicted to opioids are cured. Like stay sober after that permanently. And it goes up to over 90 something percent if they have a second treatment later for the people who are really struggling with addiction, or maybe needed to address some root causes that didn't come up the first time. So I'm going to just kind of take this back and just kind of tell y'all my story. I got married in 2004 to my husband. And prior to that, my life had been super normal. I mean, super just like from the suburbs of Dallas, very normal existence. I have two wonderful parents who love each other, who are incredible, who loved me unconditionally. And I say that because I really thought that my experience growing up was everybody's experience or most people's experiences. And as I got even into high school, I was looking at relationships between my friends and their parents and things that were going on in their homes. And I was like, I'm really lucky. And as I've grown to be an adult and I've compared these experiences with my friends, I am like blessed and highly favored to have the family that I have. And so in 2004, when I married my husband, we were both in college and he was going to be a lawyer and I was going to be like a psychologist. I have a bachelor's in psychology and he was in the National Guard. He had done 4 years of active duty service. He was in the National Guard when I married him, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. And I was like young. And when the conflict in Iraq happened, I really never expected that he was going to be deployed because like Iraq is very small. Like you can fit 1.5 Iraqs just in Texas. And in my mind, we would not need more than our active military could provide in that situation. And I was just super wrong. So we come back from our honeymoon and my husband gets deployed like in August. Like we get married in May and by August he was gone. I actually thought it was a joke. I thought his friends from the Guard were like messing with us, but he gets activation orders while we were gone for our wedding. And so my life took a really hard left-hand turn because I didn't sign up to be a military wife. I wasn't living on a post. I didn't have any support in that. It was just like, oh, you got married? Oh, he's gone. And so he deployed with the National Guard, came home, was kind of listless. I had moved back to Dallas because I had graduated. So I moved back to the Dallas area and he came and, obviously joined me and like didn't jump back into school. He really kind of wanted to go to tech. That wasn't where we were living. So he was working at a big box store. And he went to a veterans career fair, and that's where he came across Blackwater. It was doing largely the same role he was doing with the National Guard, which was convoy support, security details, things like that, but doing it in a way that had a way reduced requirement. You sign up to be in the military. I think it's like 8 years commitment. When he was gone with the National Guard, he was gone for 6 months, home for 2 weeks, gone for 6 months, home for 2 weeks. Blackwater offered the opportunity to do what he was doing, 1 year contracts. You had a bonus for completing your contract. You could just quit if you wanted to, and they would work 90 days and be home 30 days. So you're home twice as often for twice as long for like twice as much money for no commitment. They just give you more money if you actually meet your commitment. And, I was young and he was young and we didn't understand geopolitics, and we didn't understand that part of the reason the State Department had their own security was because the Department of Defense said, hey, we don't have, we have limited personnel. We can't provide that for you. But part of it's because they could push off on another company. You can scapegoat somebody. It's a way to shirk accountability. So basically, Department of State can say, you're going to do your job exactly like this. And if something goes wrong, we're going to blame you. That just is what it is. Really no arguing about that. So he goes to Iraq with Blackwater in 2006. He deploys through 2006 and most of 2007 and gets involved in that huge incident. You're just going to have to read the book. I can't rehash all that shit. It's called Raven 2-3, How the Department of Justice Betrayed American Heroes. HarperCollins published it last summer. It was extremely well written by Gina Keating, a great author. And it was terrible. So the first 3 years of my marriage, I spent with him being deployed. And that was extremely difficult and painful and lonely and something I didn't expect. And I wasn't part of the military community, so I didn't have like a support system of that. And then in 2007, he gets accused of a crime that he didn't commit. And it's like international news. Like we're hearing about like war crimes courts and like the UN. And, if he goes back into Iraq, they're trying to arrest him and take jurisdiction because there was a lot of stuff around the status of forces agreement and all this political stuff. Book. So for the next 7 years of our lives, the first 3 years we spend under stressful deployment. The next 7 years we spend under stressful legal scrutiny, and the case gets completely dismissed. We think we're okay. We start our family, and right before the 7-year statute of limitations, superseding indictment comes. He goes to trial in front of a jury in Washington, D.C. That was probably one of the worst experiences of our whole lives, because he just literally sat there in a courtroom every day and heard people lie about him, misrepresent evidence. I mean, they tried to, they did convince the jury that incoming fire was blowback from their own rounds, like they were shooting at themselves somehow. So then after the trial, there was 8 weeks of deliberations because the jury wasn't allowed to hang. So for 8 weeks, imagine this, we're all sitting around a house, like staring at each other. And anytime a phone made a noise, everybody's like, so for 8 weeks, we get conditioned to like every time a phone rings. And this was like really significant for me because I like go back, I have such phone trauma. Like seriously, if this phone made a noise right now, I'd fucking break it, like just break it over my knee and like toss it. Like, so when you go and you'll go to send me a text message that says Kristen has notifications silenced, I always have notifications silenced because I cannot. So he gets convicted. He gets sentenced to 30 years and a day in prison, as well as 2 of his other friends. One of them gets life, and they go to prison. And I'm just this random white chick from the suburbs. And I'm like, well, what do we do now, right? What do we do now? I'm a single mom. I had a great job. I was working for Bank of America at the time. I was an issues manager in their fraud and claims department. Loved that job. It was fantastic. And it was such a great place for me to be during that time in my life because I worked from home. But I also am a single mom, and I need to figure out how to get people out of prison. And I'm looking at the judicial system like, oh, well, I saw that firsthand. That shit is broken. Nobody's coming to save us from the judicial system. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to need presidential pardons. And in setting out to achieve that and looking around and trying to figure out how those things actually get done, and figuring out the path and the strategy and how to do it, somebody told me like, sorry, girl, but you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice than to get a pardon. And so for 6 years, I gutted it out. And there is something completely debilitating about knowing somebody you love is in imminent danger 24 hours a day, that they're miserable, that they're heartbroken. I would say that I spent the first 2 years in kind of this black hole of grief. I really don't have a lot of recollection of that. I have some really vivid memories of a birthday party I threw together for my daughter's second birthday. Yeah, I mean, trauma hole. Like literally, I don't remember a lot of those first 2 years until I just really had to learn how to embrace joy, because my husband had a really serious conversation with me and he's like, it doesn't make it better for for you to be miserable, and you can't feel guilty about having joy and having a good life. And it stuck. And I was like, okay. About that same time, I had a really great opportunity come into my life. This Senegence, the makeup, the skincare, all the things. It completely changed my life. Led by Joni Rogers. She's amazing. She turned into be like a personal advocate and helper of mine. And also a woman named Leslie Boyd Bradley. And she rebuilt my insides, gave me a level of personal confidence and conviction that I had never felt before, and really taught me that I could save myself and that I could be my own hero. And then if I had a problem money could solve, then I had an opportunity, and just like taught me these lessons that I will take with me for the rest of my life. So we persevered through that. Like it was super, super hard, but we persevered through that. And I earned those pardons with the help of a lot of incredible people in December of 2020. And seemingly that's the happy ending, right? He comes home and everybody's good, but that is not the case. Can you imagine having, honestly, he experienced a lot of things in his childhood that I didn't. His childhood was very different from mine. Really a really tough, difficult childhood. And then he goes and he experiences war. And then he goes and experiences more war and then betrayal by the government. I mean, the moral injury you suffer when the government you're willing to put your life on the line for completely betrays you for politics against your enemies is like insane on a mental level. And then you go into the most violent, dangerous place on earth for 6 full years. 6 years of not having your basic needs met, of being in danger 24 hours a day. Do you think you're going to come home all peaceful and zen? Or do you think you're going to come home angry, bitter, frustrated, sick, resentful? Darkness. There's darkness. So he came home and he did everything he could to just white knuckle it, right? Like doing everything he could on the outside to like try to be cool, but then at home where he felt safe, it was all just kind of leaking out of him. And that is something that I have like complete compassion for and always have, which is why, we're still here. But it was really, really tough to be the recipient, to be on the like receiving end of the anger and the darkness and the survival mode and the things that he was never given tools to deal with as a child, because he didn't receive that household that was full of like stability and structure and two parents that loved one another unconditionally and loved you unconditionally. Like that is a huge thing. Like you cannot underestimate the role you play in your children's lives for them dealing with future adversity. And so he had zero tools, and everything that bad that could have happened to him happened to him. And being on the receiving end of that and really struggling through, not wanting to do talk therapy, did a few rounds of EMDR, but then that kind of fell apart, and like really just trying to gut it out and trying to like white knuckle life. You know what I mean? Like holding on a steering wheel, like white knuckling it, like, ugh! And it was really hard. And so from like 21, 22, 23, we were really, really struggling. And I let my Senegence business kind of fall apart because it required me to show up here in like a really authentic way. I always joke that I was the world's highest paid cheerleader because I struggled well while he was gone, because my home was very peaceful. Like the world could rage on, but it was me and my Lily in our home, and it was always peaceful. But then the things that were not peaceful came into my home, and I had to deal with them every day, and I could not show up in that way. And so I let my Senegence business kind of like go because I couldn't show up authentically, and I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, everything's cool. And I kind of was, and it created this push pull within me where I'm just out here like being a Barbie doll, but at home I'm like depressed and anxious and frustrated, and we like have a fight in the car on the way somewhere, and then I've got to go act normal because we're keeping up appearances. And by 23 it was awful. It was awful. I reached a point where my sense of identity had shifted dramatically, because in my mind, I had worked so hard. I had done so good. I had struggled so well. I had, earned his freedom, and he came home, and because of what was going on with him, it felt like you should be my biggest cheerleader, but you're like the meanest person in my life. And I'm not saying this to, say anything bad about my wonderful husband, because like he's a wonderful husband and I completely understood. I mean, like I have a degree in psychology. There is nothing unexpected about what he experienced. It also isn't unexpected that it would cause me a lot of pain and crushed kind of my identity and unveiled some things about me, like revealed my need for validation and attention seeking and these other things. And in that moment, I betrayed him and I super regret it. And so we've created resentment between us, or we did create resentment between the two of us from the way we treated each other when we were dealing with our own traumas. And so we decided, we were like, okay, we have to make a huge change. And one of the things for us in Texas is we're kind of popular here. We have our people here. We have an amazing community here and people who love and support us that we also want to spend a lot of time with. And one of the things that happens in prison is super dehumanizing. I mean, he just is made to feel like just a piece of shit every day, all day. And then he comes home and he's held in this position of honor because he should be, right? And we're being asked to all the events and come speak at this thing and come sit at our table. And it was beautiful. And we said a lot of yeses. And I don't regret any of that because he really deserved to be honored and to be recognized for the incredible person that he is. He's brilliant. He's great at politics and law. He is so smart. He is such a scholar. I call him my poet warrior. But what that didn't do was create any space for us to deal with ourselves or each other. We were just like out here smiling and doing the things. And at home, it was like a disaster. And I reached my breaking point and he was like, and God just kind of prompted us to move to Florida. We sold all our stuff. We took a dive on the house. We moved to the beach. And the agreement was work, school, nothing else. No politics, no clubs, no groups, no events, no philanthropy. Like I do all the philanthropy, I do all the things. And we did. And the first year was honestly just like nervous system. It was like sleeping. It was eating. It was crying. It was praying. It was laying on the beach in the hot sun, getting sunburnt because it's like a tattoo, right? Sometimes it just hurts so good. And so we spent the first year just kind of like, and I just started setting boundaries. Like, I understand that you're hurt, but you can't speak to me this way. I understand that you're hurt, but you have to get control over the outburst. Like, and we just like went back and forth and he just softened and I just watched him soften over the course of the first year. And then the second year, it was like we kind of like came out of the fog, but he experienced some things that were really difficult on a professional level. A woman had offered him a role with a nonprofit, never paid him for that role, brought him onto his for-profit. And then we find out that she's doing super illegal things. I mean, completely shady, is like the subject of a whole slew of lawsuits. I would be surprised if she manages to avoid jail. But additional betrayal from somebody within his Blackwater community at that point in our lives was extremely shocking for him and a really horribly negative experience. And so he had to kind of like dig in and do this inner work. And we did the work together and we both did the work. I mean, I'm so proud of us. Like we absolutely did everything we could around mindset, around self-control, around our narratives, around challenging old narratives and old stories that we had in our head about being honest with one another about resentments and betrayals and how we found ourselves in the position that we did. And we did literally everything we possibly could. And we come out the other side at 2 years and being in Florida and decide we're, moving back to Texas. And my nervous system is still fucked up. His nervous system is still fucked up. We realized they're just things that you cannot think your way out of. So we started looking at some psychedelic therapies, ketamine. I had been looking at ketamine. We had even looked at ayahuasca ceremonies, but they didn't resonate with me because it feels like this like ritualistic thing that isn't cohesive with me and Jesus. And so I was really nervous about that. And, it was funny because we had gotten to the point where we'd find ourselves in these argument patterns or this like negativity that we could not break on our own and just with our conscious thought and be like, okay, so we're going to go fucking lick frogs in the forest or what, and kind of joke about it. But I feel like we had reached this point of desperation where it was like, honestly, I'll just do whatever it takes because I just can't live like this anymore. This pain that lives inside me. And it was destroying our marriage because like, You can have compassion for somebody and you can completely love them and trust them and see who they are today. But I could not see him through the lens of who he is today. I could only see him through the lens of all of the things that had transpired between us. So I had reached this point in my soul where it was like, I love you, but don't touch me. And that's such a horrible place to be for us both, because he deserves to be like loved and loved well and to receive deep affection. And I deserve to feel safe and to give those things freely and wanting. And so this past summer, like I said, the book came out, the book by HarperCollins, and he works for one of our House District reps here. And he was having a fundraiser event, and former Texas Governor Rick Perry was there. And so it was a small event. We took a signed copy of the book. We had the ability to talk with him. He read the whole book, and he contacted us about a week later and was like, hey, I want to tell you about something called Ibogaine. And we'd heard about Ibogaine previously. My friend Jay had actually offered to sponsor my husband for treatment through their foundation, Mission Within. Incredibly generous offer, but the timing was all wrong for us, and we didn't really understand a lot about it. And we were just about to move and get settled back in Texas, and that was really like all encompassing, and we needed jobs and like all this stuff was going on, and so the timing wasn't right. So when Governor Perry reached out to us and he offered to sponsor us both, he also spent like an hour on the phone with each of us, individually, together. He had a woman that he, was very close with, contact me from a women's perspective and talk me through the Ibogaine treatment. And what I learned is that it's like a brain medicine. Like, so your brain is changed by trauma. Your brain is changed by traumatic brain injuries. It's changed by a lot of different things. And what this does is it actually heals your brain. Like scientific studies, you can go look it up, Stanford University, it has massive effects on the actual physical structure of the brain. So like Governor Perry did an MRI beforehand, went and had his treatment done, MRI after, MRI is clear. This is not an anomaly. It's not rare. It's not unusual. It's normal. It is normal for like the lesions that are created on your brain from trauma and TBI and all these things that happen to us over our time, for them to be corrected on a physiological level. But then on a spiritual level, something else is happening, because there are medicines for the body and then there are medicines for the soul. And the iboga plant comes from the root of an ancient tree in Africa. It's a psychedelic, but it's not a recreational psychedelic. So, there are like mushrooms and LSD and things like that that produce a psychedelic effect. Sometimes they have meaning, but largely, I'm getting red. I always do that when I talk. Jill, just whatever, it's fine. But they have this psychedelic effect, and it's like a recreational trip where people are just wanting to escape reality, because like reality sucks. But it doesn't necessarily create a lot of meaning, that there's not like a lot of physical benefit that I'm aware of. So learning about this psychedelic, it does create a psychedelic effect in some patients. Not all patients have visuals. Some patients have visuals that don't appear to have meaning at the time. But what a lot of people, including myself, experienced is that they were able to process things emotionally and spiritually. It's like it puts the ego in timeout. So like for me, because of my orientation, like me and the Lord could go back through my subconscious and look at these things that happened in my life with fresh eyes and fresh perspective. And so when he offered me that opportunity and my husband that opportunity, we looked into it further. I watched the Joe Rogan podcast with Governor Perry and Brian Hubbard. I suggest it. It's kind of long. It's a couple hours, but it's fantastic. And I learned a lot about like people with Parkinson's disease. I met a woman when I was at the retreat who was suffering with bipolar. And there's just a lot of different things that it treats. So we said yes, because like, honestly, I decided that I was more afraid of remaining the same than I was of receiving this treatment. And I felt really safe because I was going to a place called Beyond in Mexico. They're arguably one of the nicest, best, most advanced facilities. It's more like a med spa feeling where there's just like a beautiful pool and there's like sound healings and breath work. And it was just like phenomenal experience. And so that was what led me like emotionally to the place where I was willing to do something kind of drastic that felt pretty brave in order to receive release and freedom. And so the truth is when I went down there is I wanted clarity, I wanted strength, And I wanted permission to end my marriage because I wanted freedom, because I wanted to be loved and loved freely. And I wanted that for Paul as well, because I just couldn't imagine him living the rest of his life with somebody who couldn't love him freely, because he deserves it. And he deserves to be recognized for exactly who he is today and not who he was when he was acting in trauma, because, like, who wouldn't? Um, and so I went for this experience and I received what's called a flood dose. It's like a big dose. The process lasts about 11 or 12 hours. So you can, trip for 11 or 12 hours. And out of the 6 people in my cohort group that did this, 5 of us had overwhelmingly positive experiences where we were able to reframe things, where we were able to grieve things, where we just went on this journey with the Lord, or, creator, or whoever, they were oriented towards, and really received a lot of meaning and deliverance and release and freedom. And instead of receiving permission and strength and all of these things, God was very, very gentle with me and very, very clear with me. I was not there to be punished, because one thing that I was worried about going in is that, there's kind of, some people report kind of this life review component where they're kind of walking through their life and they see things that they've done that are dark, and you have to confront yourself in this experience. And I was expecting to go in and have to talk to God about all the nasty things I did. And I wasn't looking forward to that, but I just surrendered. And I was like, Lord, whatever you need to show me to heal me, show me, and please spare me from anything that you don't. And he gave me exactly that. So I received my 12-hour flood dose. And through that process, I received a complete reframing of my life. My visuals were not anything wild or terribly interactive. What they were was almost like looking at a television screen, and it had kind of a green tint to it. Most things were kind of, monochrome, and something would come in and it would have kind of obvious meaning to me, or some things would come in that didn't have any obvious meaning, that just felt like whatever. And I would process them and they would float away. And then something else would come in and they would float away. I mean, it was a really gentle process. And there was this moment. So I do visualization, right? And everybody should have a place that they go within themselves that makes themselves feel calm. And mine is the ocean. And I was visualizing, and when I visualize myself on a catamaran sitting on the edge with my legs dangling over. And I can hear my daughter in the kitchen behind me making a snack or fooling around in there, because she always is. And I always wanted there to be a man with me, but I would not assign it to Paul, because I just couldn't envision forecasting a future with somebody who caused me a lot of pain. And I almost refused to believe that it was him. So fast forward to somewhat recently, some of y'all saw I did some AI headshots for work. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I did these AI headshots for work, and one of them was me on a boat, and I'm wearing this white button-down shirt, and it's me. I mean, it's clearly me. My wrinkles, my smile lines, my forehead, it is clearly me standing on this boat, and it was like, boom. And it just felt like this sweet little precious gift from God, keep going, keep going. And in my journey, I think the most profound moment, and the only moment where I had an interactive immersion versus the screen, was the boat. And I could see myself, and I was looking over the shoulder of someone, and I look over and I realize it's Paul, and our faces are full of joy, and we rushed to each other and we embraced each other. And God released me. He just released me from all of the pain and the hurt. It's like he excavated it all. He took it from my toes and brought it out and showed me the beauty. I mean, the beauty of my journey, and the strength and the provision. And that I can have the future that I wanted with the person, and I could love freely again. And so I came out of my, this experience, and I was like, I'm free to love my husband. I'm free. I just felt free. It was so intense. And, I didn't go in for addiction. I didn't go in for, having been violated. A lot of things happen to people in this terrible world. But receiving that level of emotional freedom to no longer be captured by my pain and anger and resentment and all the other things that dwelled underneath there, like a bag that I refused to put down. He just took it right out of my hands. Um, so a couple days later, we have a supplementary dose, that standard protocol at Beyond. They actually do two supplementary doses, and we substituted my second substitutory dose, not me, but our whole group. The second supplementary dose was something called Bufo or 5-MeO-DMT, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But we did a supplemental dose. Now, during your supplemental dose, most people don't experience visuals. It's a smaller dose, it's a couple hours. Most people report just being kind of a restful, like meditative state, including myself. That's really what it was. And I just relaxed and surrendered because I had so much trust for the process at that point. And I just let my mind wander, and I was able to go back in and retrieve some of these thoughts and notice myself thinking about them differently, feeling about them differently. And I get up from this 2-hour experience, I take my mask off, and I'm like, I want to go home. And it's the first time I've wanted to go home in a really long time. As a matter of fact, I had scheduled several extra days in Mexico just to decompress, to take time to myself, because I'd done that for myself. It's just created space for myself to just feel my feelings I call it dealing. I just got to deal with myself. I'm going to put myself in timeout. I'm going to deal with myself. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to be alone. I just wanted to go home. And so I got checked out my phone. We didn't have our phones for 7 days. Went and had my facilitator go with me. She just pulled up my Expedia app. I changed my flights, and I was like, I'm just going to go home. And then on Friday, we had this what's called Bufo experience, and that is outside. It's a really short process. It's actually something that you smoke. We had a shaman come, and he blesses it. He leads you through the process, and then while you're experiencing it, he's very spiritually attuned and plays certain instruments and plays certain music and kind of works with you. And he's also, they also had medical practitioners. So when I was receiving my flood dose, I was in, it kind of looks like a hospital environment, but it's so cozy, and the people are so warm, and they have nice mood lighting and nice scents and wonderful things in there, because it's just a very gentle place. And then we also, during the Friday ceremony, which was outside very, very early in the morning, we had medical staff there as well, just to watch over everything and make sure everything was cool, as well as the trained shaman. And that experience was really incredible, because Ibogaine is very introspective and draws you into yourself and helps you deal with yourself as an individual. And then the Bufo or 5-MeO-DMT is really expansive. It brings you into oneness. It opens you up to the universe and to the Lord. And so my experience with that was, I guess I scared the hell out of some people, because it looked like I was wrestling with a demon or something. I just bleh, for a second. But once I relaxed into the experience, I think I was kind of resisting it, honestly, because I don't like to be out of control. Once I relaxed into the experience, I experienced this overwhelming peace, and I was looking up at the same sky that I had been looking up at moments before, but it had this pink cast to it, and I could tell that I was in the presence of the Lord. And thinking that I was going to have this very internal experience, I actually ended up speaking aloud and talking to God about my pain, about the things, about my silence. It feels weird to me not to be in this space and sharing with you all vulnerably and honestly, because I've always done that. That was really just how I processed my life at the time, was showing up and talking to you guys about it, because y'all are the best hype squad on the planet. I have cultivated the absolute most amazing community ever. You people are so nice to me. Y'all are so accepting of me. Y'all are so loving towards me. And I really wanted that back in my life. And so I talked to God about silence, and I remember telling him that I was afraid to open my mouth because I was afraid rage would come out and that it would be destructive. And he said, no, daughter, that is holy fire. You have healing, you have freedom, you have gifts to share. And you had your cocoon season, silkworm. That's a valuable season. Silkworms make amazing products, right? But then they go into their cocoon, and they have to go through a very painful process to emerge as a butterfly. You have to scrape all the goo off to get their wings dry enough to fly. And he was like, this was your cocoon season, and now you can go fly and you can go talk again, and you don't have to be silent. And it's not rage, even if it's fire. And I'm fiery, you know what I mean? I just kind of don't give a fuck. And it was an incredibly, just like I said, an incredibly liberating, free experience that completely changed my perspective on life, my joy, my peace. And honestly, my only goals were to stop feeling like my chest was in a vice grip 24/7 and to get my nervous system back under control. And what I got was dealing with the root cause. It's not symptom management, it's soul management, and spiritually cleansed those things from me that were causing me to feel that way all the time. So since I have returned, I have been sleeping. I was drinking 50 milligram hemp drinks, from the place up the street. I actually loved the drinks. They were really effective, legal in Texas, but 50 freaking milligrams of THC, and sometimes it didn't even work, right? That's not great. And I'm sleeping. My nervous system isn't crazy. I noticed on the plane on the way home, we hit a little bit of turbulence, which normally flips me out, right? And I never indicate them out loud because I'm just not that person. But inside, I am a wreck whenever we hit turbulence. And you know what I experienced this time? Like butterflies, like I used to, when I felt normal, right? So instead of my entire nervous system being like, we're going to die, and like my heart clenching up, and I called it my scary heart or my wonky heart, like I was literally afraid because like the number one killer of women is heart disease, and it's because we eat pain for breakfast. We got to kind of stop doing that. We're going to have to actually like process the emotions and things, even if it makes us feel not strong. Look at a juice us. To the sisters who understand that, but we cannot internalize all of that and stuff it down and expect our heart to just keep on beating, right? So I received the physical release that I was looking for. I'm sleeping again. I'm joyous again. I'm light again. I noticed that it's easier for me to eat. Eating was really a big struggle for me. Yesterday, I didn't have to battle myself at all to go make myself like bacon and a yogurt parfait before noon. Most times I wait until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon until I'm starving and then try to like catch up on calories throughout the rest of the day, not making amazing food choices, just like shoving meat or cheese or fruit or whatever, which is fine. But like, not great, especially if you're not, trying to like maintain a good weight and be healthy and be strong and stuff like that. So I really extremely recommend this for the people it's right for, because it's one of those things where it's for anybody, but it's not for everybody. And some people will say, oh, psychedelics, because they're going to associate it with like a recreational psychedelic, escapism, things like that. This is not a recreational experience unless you really want to do inner soul work and confront your demons. But most people only have to do it once. And I would say that depends. I mean, people who are deep in chemical dependency, like I said, it was like over 80% one treatment, success rate, 90% with two, but it was 100% worth the investment, worth the bravery, worth the vulnerability. I went with the Beyond Service program, which is their nonprofit side, and we stayed in a place called the Oasis. And I was with 5 other veteran wife spouses and 2 veteran wife facilitators. And they did prep calls for every week for 4 weeks, because it's so important that you go in with intentions, but not expectations. Intentions being like, this is what I hope to get out of it, but also I'm not going to expect visuals. I'm not going to expect this physical result right away. Like, I'm not going to expect. You have to surrender intelligently. You have to surrender intelligently, and them creating this container of love, of vulnerability, of the ability to just come in and be completely raw and gritty and honest about who we are and the things that we've done and the things that we've experienced and what we want to work on and what we want to get out of this. And they took care of our hearts. They took care of our minds. They took care of our bodies. They took away our phones. They mothered the mothers for 7 days. They fed us. They made sure we had good food and good snacks. We had massages. We had water massages. We had breath work. We had sound healings. It was phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal. I couldn't recommend Beyond more. Obviously, I don't have any experience anywhere else. My husband's going to MBO in June. He had already enrolled in school, and because he was using his post 9/11 GI Bill benefits, he couldn't like withdraw, and he didn't want to anyways. So when this came up, we decided to do his at the end of his school term. And God is so good to me, and I'm so lucky that I got to go first and release the tension valve in our home, which was me being unable to see him for who he is today, and looking through things from a lens of trauma. And I think I'll probably wrap up here, but I wanted to walk you through kind of the background on how I find myself in a position where I was doing the same treatment as somebody who's addicted to fentanyl. I was addicted to pain and suffering and being strong and not being vulnerable and not processing feelings and not crying. I allow myself to cry. And when I allow myself to cry, I always end up laughing because the sun always rises in the morning. God always turns my tears to joy. Phenomenal. So I hope this helps somebody. It is kind of pricey, but here's the thing. So it's not legal in the United States because it's considered a Schedule 1 drug. And the definition of a Schedule 1 drug is something that has no medical benefit whatsoever. And that does not apply here. So we have a lot of work to do in the United States to make Ibogaine legal and accessible so that we're not having to pay out of pocket, so that veterans can receive this treatment in the United States through the VA system, who should be paying for this, who should be helping them with restoration for healing. And part of this journey is that when I was getting to know Governor Perry through this process, I applied for a job with a nonprofit called the Pacific Legal Foundation, and got called back, for an interview. And I reached out to Governor Perry and I asked him for a referral and like a recommendation because I thought that would be really impressive. And he was like, well, I can do that, or I'm actually hiring the equivalent role, development director for Americans for Ibogaine. And we need someone like you who is a storyteller, who gets big yeses, who knows how to advocate, who knows how to network. And I'd like for you to come to work for Americans for Ibogaine. And they hired me in December before I even received my treatment because he had so much confidence and faith in me. And so now not only do I get to receive the benefits of Ibogaine and talk to you all about what it did in my life, is I'm going to be part of the core team that has the ability to bring this to more people, to veterans, to people who are suffering with opioid addiction. We barely even talked about survivors of trauma and trafficking and things like that. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that the Lord gave us that needs to be stewarded carefully, that needs medical supervision, that needs preparatory work, that needs integration work afterwards. We have 4 more weeks of not only like group coaching sessions, but also individual coaching sessions to ensure that you get a 90-day window. So once the Ibogaine is in your system, like there is the process that I went through that week, but it turns into something called noribogaine, and you have that in your system for up to 12 weeks afterwards. What that does is it opens up synaptic pathways. So through time, I'm 45, your brain says, I have a task. This receptor signals, thing A, this receptor receives B. During this time frame, you have neuroplasticity. When you say, oh, I'm going to do this task, several synapses open, and you get to pick a new one if you want to. So for me, yesterday, my brain was very flexible with food. Instead of it saying, no, you're a burden, don't do that, you need to work, there's these other things, there's this expectation, one more thing before you eat, my brain was like, oh, we're going to nourish ourselves today. We'll feel better. We'll have more longevity. And that sounds really nice. I really just want to eat something right now. So I stopped what I was doing and I went and eat. So instead of synapse A sending the message to synapse B, we don't get to eat, my needs are a burden, synapse C was like, I'm not a burden. Nourishing my body is important. This feels good and this serves everybody around me. And, went over to synapse D that said, okay, let's go make a parfait and some bacon. Just little things. And I've received a lot of revelation since then, like just in my quiet time, laying down, especially at night, laying down and talking to the Lord as I fall asleep. And as soon as I wake up, those are just like my times. And we talk a lot throughout the day, but those are the times where I'm just settling in with him and really talking. And I'm really being very intentional about what I'm creating in my heart and in my mind over the next 90 days to take complete advantage of the neuroplasticity that's been created in my brain, and the joy and the liberation and the freedom from old thoughts and patterns. So if you've got more questions, I would love to tell you. If you want to support these efforts, please let me know. The things we need most are money and public support. So Texas has passed $50 million in funding for trials, but it's matching funds. So we have to raise 50 million to unlock the 50 million, which is brilliant as a taxpayer. We do not want them just giving away $50 million in any kind of anything. They had to form a consortium. All of the money that's spent has to go towards specifically FDA approvals versus, having researchers come in and just research it and do things that don't actually lead towards an FDA approval. And we need public support. There has been great coverage on podcasts and things like that, but we don't have paid marketing. The organization has been around like 7 months and doing a phenomenal job organically, but it's time to, it's like big girl pants, right? We're going to have to sort out, a significant amount of money and a significant amount of support to get this done, but it's totally achievable because God wants freedom. He wants healing. He wants people to be restored. He wants glory, and he wants for his purposes to be served here on earth. And my appointment is to set people free through the pardons, through my amazing network marketing journey where I got to coach thousands of women in entrepreneurship who set themselves free from financial situations that were bad, from marriages that were bad, from all kinds of things through this freedom. And I get another opportunity to help set people free, and I'm going to take it, and it's going to be absolutely magical. So if you've got questions or you want to be involved, I would love to hear from you. I am a little messy right now, I'll be honest, because it was such a profound and overwhelmingly positive experience for me. Probably sounds a little crazy, like, oh shit, girl. That's okay. I understand that too. But I would love to hear from you. And if you're considering this treatment, it's just well worth it. It's worth the investment in yourself, in your soul, in your freedom, in your body. And if you have questions about how to set true intentions, but not expectations, how to surrender to this process, I would love to talk to you about my experience as well. All right. So I think I actually will post this because I'm feeling pretty good about it. Love y'all. Bye.